So in this topic, if you try to understand what is this topic, there is a report recently. This report was commissioned by LinkedIn India, and this has been made by the Quant Hub. Quant Hub क्या है? ये एक policy research institute है. This is a policy research institute which has basically framed this report using the data from LinkedIn India. Since LinkedIn India has millions of people and their work profile on it, so they have used that data to create what is happening with respect to corporates and their leadership at the top level. And there they have specifically talked about role of women and what is the proportion of women at the top level, and it gives us very good insights where we can understand what is the relevance of women in the top leadership, what is the need or significance or benefits of having more women in the top of the corporates, then what are the issues, why the women are not there in the top leadership positions in the corporates, right, or in general in the labor force if you talk about India. And then we will see some recommendations that has been suggested in the report or some solutions that has been suggested in the report. So one by one we will look into all these aspects. Before that, I'll also provide you certain facts and data which can be used in your mains answers, right? And it's a very interesting topic and very important from the exam point of view. Generally, if you see the mains questions, they are not generally asked very broader or very basic, जहाँ पे वो पूछेंगे कि women का role बताओ हमारे labor force के अंदर, right? So we have to see it in multiple aspects. पहले हम इसे society के perspective से देखेंगे, right? So in society we have to understand that what are the problems, that why women are not able to reach at the top of the leadership. Then we will look from the economic point of view, क्या benefits और क्या losses होते हैं, या क्यों नहीं है women, right? Labor force participation rate, and we will try to combine both the factors over here to understand this basic thing that is taking place, and we will try to have some global examples also, that what are the legislations that we have, what are the governance steps that we have taken, and what needs to be taken, and what we learned from the other countries, right? So we will try to cover all those things. So this report says that in India, the participation of women in the top leadership in corporates has been below 30% in the last decades, and currently it is stagnating or even declining after post pandemic. इस रिपोर्ट ने बेसिकली ये आउटकम निकाला है कि जो हमारी टॉप या मीडियम टू टॉप लेवल लीडरशिप पोस्ट हैं कॉर्पोरेट्स के अंदर, वहाँ पे लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन रेट जो है वो हमेशा 30% के नीचे रहा है. इट इज़ बिलो 30%, एंड इट हैज़ बीन currently it has been stagnating or even falling after post pandemic or since post pandemic, right? And this is basically a worrisome thing कि we have been doing good, we have been like this has been increasing, which is a good point for us, but why it has become stagnant? So we have to understand the problems that has arisen after the COVID, why it has become stagnant. And the third thing that they have mentioned is sectors, right? There is sectoral discrepancies that we have seen in our leadership roles that has been given to women. There are certain sectors like education, there are certain sectors like government administration where the women in the top leadership positions are 30% and 29%, while there are sectors which are like maybe general administrative and services, maybe hospitals and healthcare, where this percentage is somewhere around 23%. Then there are certain sectors where the percentage or proportion is very low, like construction, oil and gas, yeah, oil and mining, or your gas, right, or your utilities, where the percentage is somewhere around 11%, right? So there are sectoral discrepancies. So still in our society we think, or many people believe, that certain roles are designed for women and certain roles are not designed for women. And this is very common, right? You will see that most of the teachers in the schools, most of the teachers in the colleges, principals of the private schools, most of them are female. Although you might not find it in the UPSC field, you will not find many women teachers in the UPSC field, that's a different thing. But apart from that, at the lower level you find this. In fact, if you are giving UPSC and you have seen the results, many girl students have been continuously qualifying, and even in the tops there are even more girls as compared to boys somehow. So this is basically something which proves that women are equally capable, but it is the society which is stopping them, and we will see how the society is stopping them, right? So there are certain things, if the women are given equal opportunities and are treated equally, then they can actually do better than men in many places, and there is no doubt or deniability to this, and we will try to understand all these aspects. So first of all, पहले कुछ बेसिक्स लिख लेते हैं एंड फिर हम वन बाय वन इन चीजों को डिस्कस करते हैं. सो ये रिपोर्ट किसने पब्लिश की है? सो दिस रिपोर्ट was commissioned by LinkedIn India. Commissioned by So the first thing that we are talking about is that this reports talk about is representation of women in corporate roles has been below 30% in India. Write it down. Representation of women in corporate role has been below 30% in India and is stagnating or even declining post-pandemic, right? So this is basically the major topic of discussion, that from where we are getting this topic. Now let's talk about some data first, which you can use in your mains answer writing. So first point that they have given is sectoral discrepancies that exist. So the first thing is that industries such as education and government administration has highest representation of women in leadership roles. Industries such as education, which is 30%, and government administration, which is 29%, has highest proportion of women in leadership role. This is followed by administrative and supportive services, and hospital and healthcare, 23% each. Lowest is in construction, oil and gas, mining and utilities. Construction, oil and gas, mining and utilities, 11% each. Second is, if you guys were with me when we were discussing the budget in February, we have discussed that the government has given a data which says that female labor force participation rate in India has increased to 37%, which is a good thing to know, right? It has increased from 23% to 37%, and this is something which by our finance minister at that time, Nirmala Sitharaman, who himself is a woman, talked about it in the budgetary speech. But many private many private reports and their research says that the numbers are not more than 24% or somewhere around 24% labor force participation rate, female labor force participation rate in India. But we will be only using the government data, so we will be taking 2-3 points for negative, 2-3 points for positive, and so that we can have points from all the aspects, right? So write down the next point is about the female labor force participation rate, which is a good thing to know that it has been increasing in India, right? And still we lag behind the countries like USA, UK and all those countries or developed nations where the female labor force participation rate is 47, 42, 45%. We are still 10-12% behind them, right? So female labor force participation rate in India has been low. Participation rate in India has been low, but the good thing is that it is increasing or improving gradually. But improving gradually, reaching 37% in 2023. Then there is one more data that has been given by the World Bank. World Bank says that, this report says that in the top positions in the corporates, the women in the leadership role is somewhere around 18%. While World Bank gives a data, so I am putting the World Bank data over here. So World Bank says that women in the top leadership role in Indian corporates is somewhere around 16% in 2022, right? Which is very low. If you see the population and if we go to the last census of 2011 and see the population, somewhere around 47% is the female population in India. But when we see the corporates specifically at the top leadership, this doesn't reflect anywhere, right? It is actually far away from what the reality of the demography of our country is, right? So this is concerning, that why it is so low. And to understand why it is so low, you have to basically start from the base, and the base is that there is problem of education. Many places or many families in rural area does not consider a girl to be given the same kind of education as that to a boy, because they think that the girl has to manage the house or do the household chores, and she will not be part of the economic system of the family or the economic system of the country, right? So from the very early stages, they are not treated equally and they are not given that kind of education, or they are not motivated, or they are not basically given the opportunities to be equal to men. And that is the first problem, where they are not able to reach where the boys are, right? So if you see what happens, that after they pass say 10th or 12th, many families in the rural areas, they start looking for grooms. They start planning for their marriages. They do not send their daughters out for studying, right? They might not they might send their sons to the colleges, but they might not send their daughters to the colleges, because they think that it will not be of any use, right? They might just focus on giving them some distant education, maybe some BA degree and something like this. And this is a fact, this is a harsh reality of India, right? So first thing is this. Second thing, there is lack of women at the top, which is basically a discouraging factor for the other women, right? They do not see any role models which basically imbibe in themselves that these kind of roles are not for them. The top leadership roles are not meant for women, because you will not find much or many women at the top position. So lack of women at the top position in itself is basically discrediting them to work around it, right? Then the third problem is that there are leakages in the pipeline. We see that currently if even women are entering into the workforce, at the entry level the numbers are good, right? At the entry level the numbers, if not equal to men, they are basically increasing and they are pretty good. But the problem is that from entry level to top, there are certain leakages which took place. And why these leakages happen? So this report mentions that in India, the average age at which a woman reaches, or any male and men and women reaches to the mid leadership level roles, like maybe manager or maybe senior manager or these kind of roles, they reach to the age of 30 to 35, right? By that age, they reach to the medium leadership roles. And after that, what happens is that most of the women are either getting married around that age, they are getting married, or they are having children, because of which they have to either take the break or they have to leave their jobs, right? So this is first point of leakage that we have seen, where what is happening is that at the mid level, when they reach at the mid level, they have to either migrate due to marriage, or they have to take a break due to maternity, or due to child care, or due to care of the in-laws which are elderlies in their houses. Due to these reasons, they have to take a break, and this break causes loss of seniority, loss of pay, right? So which makes their re-entry very difficult. Also, there are social biases or gender biases in our society. 75% of the people in India feel or have those gender biases, where they feel that in economic decisions women has less role to play. These are the harsh realities which we have to understand, right? So due to these reasons, the women reaching at the top is less, right? Because in between they leave it, and when they come back, maybe they do not have the intention, or they do not have the will to basically go ahead, because they have realized that after a child, caring of a child is also a full-time job. And somehow in our society, it has been fixated that these household chores are for women, instead of that these domestic works should be shared by men and women equally. So men has been continuously working in our society, but women has to take break. After break also, she has to manage the house and the office both, due to which organizations started to feel that they might not be able to give their 100%. They might not be able to create a balance between the professional demand and the personal demand. So that is why they do not push them at the top level, because at the top level the jobs might be more demanding, right? Or sometimes even the women, they also lack the, or they also show disinterest in going above, because they feel that they might not be able to manage it. So these are the factors due to which we are seeing that less number of women are reaching to the top leadership roles in India, right? I hope you are getting my point. Or we will discuss many other reasons also, but these are the basic initial reasons, right? So we have society, that is a problem. After society, we have certain other roles which the women has to play, where men is not considered. Then we have organizational structures where there is no concept of paternity leaves, where there is no flexibility, right? The reason why post-pandemic we are seeing stagnation and decline, the reason is lack of flexibility, like hybrid system of work or work from home. So many women who have used this system or has been part of the workforce in the COVID, right, they have realized that it is much easier to manage house while sitting at home and doing the office work also. So they might be more inclined towards work from home or hybrid system. But now many corporates are not providing it, due to which many women are just looking for hybrid or work from home system, even at the loss of their growth or their career prospects, right? So these are certain reasons which we are going to discuss in the future course of action. But write down first that as per World Bank, 16% of employed people, 16% is for leadership top roles. Total percentage I have just told you is around somewhere around 27-26%, right? 30% we have just seen कि आपके मीडियम और एवरेज रोल्स की हमने बात की, सॉरी मीडियम और टॉप रोल्स की हमने बात की. So as per World Bank, 16% of employed people in senior and middle management, in senior and middle management in India were female in 2022. Write down fourth point. Fourth point is something positive. What is that something positive? That in last one decade, the number of women in the position of director on the board of the companies has increased from 6% to 18%, which is a good news, but not that actually. Why it is not a good news? Although I'm putting it as a positive point over here, but why it is not a good news? Because why this has started to happen is that after 2013, in 2013, the Companies Act was amended. So we have Companies Act 2013, which makes it mandatory that all the listed companies has to have one director on the board as female. So it has been made mandatory by the act, by the legislation, which is a good part. But even after that, we are seeing that most of the listed companies are not having women on their board. Almost 80% of the listed companies are not having women on their board of directors, right? And they are being fined, right? In the last 5 years, from 2018 to 2023, 507 crore rupees is the fine that has been levied. 507 companies have been fined for not following this norm, and the amount of fine was 27 crore rupees total collected. But still people are not doing it, still organizations are not doing it. And even in these 18% that we have seen, the number rising from 6% to 18%, many cases we have seen what is happening, that these are their family businesses, or these enterprises or corporates are run, or majority is held by a family. So just to fulfill this requirement, they have given a position, or they have given a seat as a director, someone from their family. Someone from their family has been given this, and their opinions doesn't matter, their votes doesn't matter, because they have been voting what the male member has been demanding. So ultimately they are not active participants, but they have been just made a director on the board so that they can fulfill the basic minimum requirement, right? But in many places we have seen that increase is also happening, but again both the things are there. Write down fourth point. Proportion of women serving on board proportion of women serving on board as directors has increased from 6% in 2013 to 18% in 2022. Good thing, right? But I just told you there is a legal provision, there is a legal compulsion because of which it has been done. And this is basically quite evident from the fifth point. Fifth point is that out of Fortune 500 companies in India, only 1.8% of the companies have at least three women on their board. And 20% of the companies have just the bare minimum one, which is basically they are fulfilling the legal requirement. Intentionally they are not doing it, right? So this is the third point, that only 1.8% of Fortune 500 companies in India, only 1.8% of Fortune 500 companies in India have at least 3 women on the board. 3 women on the board, while 20% adhere to requirement, while 20% adhere to requirement of having at least one director at least one director in financial year 23.